I have coffee. Now then, why have I got an outdoorsy cup indoors? I'll tell you. First of all, it's brilliant because I can just carry it around with me without spillage. And I'm clumsy. Not all the time, but a lot. And I knock things over. And this is just ideal for me because it's got... And also it's Lulu Guinness with red lips. You can tell it's been used and loved a lot. I bought one for my friend. And I thought, oh, I want one for myself. Hers looks a lot better. So it's great. And it keeps my drink warm. And as I say, I'm not as clumsy spilling stuff. Books. I've been a good girl. I've been reading. So I've got 5 for you. Let us begin. This, you know, I've been reading the Kate Atkinson, Jackson Brodie series. So I've been ploughing through those because she published a new one last year. And I thought I'm going to read them all before I read the new one. So this is When Will There Be Good News? And I find this quite an emotional one. I think this is a very heart-wrenching story. And this, with Kate Atkinson, you often get different timelines. And this is one of them. So you have a family who are living sort of in a village. They're walking through a field one day. There are 3 children, a mother and a dog. And everybody is murdered except for one of the children. And you fast forward to the modern day. And Jackson Brodie is obviously involved, but you also get to know the characters, other characters as well, in depth. So Jackson Brodie has quite an awful life in that, you know, he falls in love and his relationships are always a bit haphazard, but he also, bad things happen to him, like seriously. His life he's like a cat with 9 lives, and you know, things happen in this story as well. But you come across Reggie, who's a really adorable character, and she's kind of linked to the story in the past. And keep an eye on Reggie, because Reggie does appear again in another book. But I love Reggie because she's a kind of an innocent... She's not had an easy life. Her mother's died tragically. And I don't know, you just... Some of the characters Kate creates, you really become quite attached to, and often it's the ones you don't expect to as well. But it's just a really, really brilliant interwoven story. But I do find this one in particular in the series of Jackson Brodie very emotional. I think because it starts on such a really sad note. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed reading this as much as I did the many other times I've read it. It's the last. Well, is it? Yes, it's the Ruth Galloway series and her and Nelson. So I saved this probably for nearly a year and finally thought, running up to Christmas, now's the time. So this is kind of the final instalment, although there is a short story about them. And this is about a body that's found that's believed to be a student that went missing decades before. And again, Ruth's called into it. Nelson and Michelle are separated. Are Ruth and Nelson going to get together? It's all that, all the wonderful characters that you know. Kath Bladd, who's the druid, who I adore very, very much, is very much involved in this story in a way where you start thinking, oh dear, this might not be good news. But again, Ellie Griffiths just plots it beautifully. And she also does place really, really well. Kate Atkinson's very good at that, I feel. Very good at place, as is Anne Cleves. And Ellie Griffiths really makes you feel. And also the archaeological side of it, I love with Ellie Griffiths. So The Last Remains, I read it, I loved it, and I hope it's not the end. Now then, this one started early, took my dog, Jackson Brodie again. This one I like because you get quite a human story. So you have an ex-police officer, but you also start in the past again, and it brings in lots of, you know, in the days when policemen had their fingers in a lot of pies and were up to no good, and stories about that. And there's children involved, and a woman trying to find her birth family, and Jackson Brodie's helping her with that. And you've got Tracy Waterhouse, I think, yeah, that's it, Tracy Waterhouse, who was a police officer. She's now a security officer in a shopping centre, and she kind of ends up on a road of, yeah, questionable behaviour, but she's done it for the right reason. And it's so beautifully written that you can't help but like her, and you can't help but want her to, you know, want it to be successful. But again, brilliant story. Kate's very good at picking out things that are happening at the time, and really emotional storylines that intertwine. But she also gives you good baddies of varying degrees. And I really enjoyed this one. It's another good one. So on the path to getting to the end of the Jackson Brodies. This one I got because I saw it recommended on Between the Covers with Sarah Cox, and I liked the sound of it. And it's by Jen Ashworth, who I'd never heard of as an author, and it's called Ghosted. And it's a beautiful, I mean, look at the cover. Cover's great. If you're a cover person, it's exquisitely written. Not quite, I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't quite what I expected. So it's about Laurie, who works as a cleaner. She's clearly super clever, and clearly has had issues with her father, who is still alive, but he suffers with dementia. So she's clearly had an issue with her father in the past, who clearly wasn't a very nice man. And her mother's died. Her father's got dementia, but lives in his own home and has a carer, cleaner. Laurie is married, but clearly could have been a lot more than a cleaner. She's a cleaner in a university, clearly could have been a lot more. She's married, and her husband basically disappears. She comes home one day and he's gone. And there's no rhyme, no reason. It's just an ordinary morning. They start off with an ordinary morning. She's a bit annoyed that he hasn't hooked a curtain back on the hook that she'd asked him to do time and time again. But what she does, which is quite unusual, and this is when you're gripped, is she doesn't really do anything about it. He kind of disappears for quite some time before she thinks to mention it to the police. And she also doesn't tell his mother for months. And you think, hang on a minute. But the story, you kind of go back in the past to Laurie's story. You kind of understand her more. You also understand her marriage, her relationship there. And this flits in different timelines. Her father, her relationship with her father, how her father was, how her mother was. The carer is involved as well. And it's beautifully written, and you begin to see her story and the trauma that she's facing still and dealing with, and how it affects her way of life. And it is exquisitely written. I think it was unusual, and then it kind of became, oh right, yeah, a little bit predictable, but the writing saves it in many ways. Jen Ashworth is a brilliant storyteller, and I really loved it so much that I've been looking at a lot of her other work as well, but thoroughly recommend it. I really enjoyed reading it. Now this one, Whale Fall, I think I saw this on Between the Covers, and I love the sound of it. It's debut novel by Elizabeth O'Connor, and it's set pre-Second World War, so the end of the 1930s, and it's about a woman on an island just off the coast of Wales. It's a very traditional island. They're probably about 10 years behind the mainland, and basically the young people on the island want off the island because the grass is greener on the mainland. And Manod is no different. She wants off the island. Her mother's dead. Her father's a fisherman, like a lot of people there. She's got a sister who's unusual. And the men just keep going to the mainland. And the idea is, the women just get married and have children. And that's what they're there to do. But she wants more. And she's intelligent. She speaks English because most of the islanders speak Welsh. And then a whale washes up on the beach. and it brings about a lot of changes, and there's an awful lot of folklore around it. But two English people come, and a man and a woman, and they want to document the island and the people on the island. And Manod helps them because her English is so good. And it's about her interaction with people from the mainland, her relationship with the man and the woman, her sexuality, her grief over her mother, her wanting, her need to be different, her wanting more than what's expected of her, and also not appreciating what she has been on the island, the beauty of the island, what they're surrounded by, the nature, and the seasons, how the seasons affect, and the seasons tell their own story. What Elizabeth O'Connor really grips is not just the people, but very much you feel the winter months, you feel the spring, you can hear the birds, you can see the birds, you can smell the smells, you can imagine the colours. It is absolutely exquisite. It's the most beautiful, beautiful story. It reminded me a little bit of, although it's not a tiny book as such, but Claire Keegan, her writing, it reminded me of that she says everything in some of the chapters are just a tiny little paragraph. She says an awful lot in a few words, but it's there. It's like on the canvas, it's a painting, and it's beautiful. I really look forward to other books I hope that she's going to write, because this was a beauty, an absolute beauty. It was like poetry, really, and I read it in a very short space of time. I just really wanted it to know the story. It was almost like I just wanted to feel what it made me feel, which was this wonderful sort of, it was almost like this gauze of beauty that floats over you when you read it. It makes you feel really comfortable and wonderful and settled. I absolutely loved it. And those are the books. So onwards, it won't surprise you that I'm reading Big Sky by Kate Atkinson at the moment, and then I'll be moving on to the new one that she brought out last year. My TBR pile is extensive, so I've got a TBR pile that you can't see, and then you might see I've moved more here. Yeah, because I did get books for my birthday and Christmas, so I've got a few to go through. And I need to have a bit of an edit, actually, because there's one or two I've looked and thought, am I going to read them? Maybe not. But my friend, I usually pass them on to my friend, or she passes them on to her mum. Her mum's in her 90s and loves reading. And what's really sweet is when I send books and she passes them on to her mum writes me handwritten notes to thank me, which are just divine. Proper manners. She's a true lady. So I love it. I love getting these little handwritten notes, and she tells me what she's reading, and it's really nice, little correspondence going. I want to do a bit of pen pal, I think, maybe with her. Right, I think that's everything. There's the books. Let me know if you've found anything. Let me know if you've read anything that I've recommended that you've enjoyed, and what grabs you. And also, what stage are you with your reading? Do you ever pick a book up and think, no, I'm not connecting with it, and you give up on it? Or do you plough through? In my younger years, I always ploughed through with a book. I felt it was my duty to read it. Now, too many books, not enough time. If I can't connect with it, no, I'll pass it on to somebody else. But do let me know. Right, I'm off, and I'll be back soon. Take care.